God will not give you more than you can handle. So, let's do a show of hands for not a quote. I've got one, got two, got three there. Okay. Misquote. Who thinks that's a misquotation? A few more hands there. Oh, are you going to put your hand up for all of them, Alan? Is it a part quotation? No, we got a few for part quotation. Which actually... Or is it an interpret quote? You'll get it right eventually, Greg. This one is actually a misquote, although it probably has elements of a part quote in there as well.
It's got elements of the last one, in the sense that people often quote it, and to the point where people believe it.
Yes.
Sort of.
So so the question is if this is a misquote, where does this misquote come from?
So I think you've got the reference now.
I've got 1 Corinthians 10:13.
Could you read out 1 Corinthians 10:13 for me rather than me?
You are tempted in the same way that everyone else is tempted, but God can be trusted not to let you be tempted too much, and he will show you how to escape your temptations.
So here we have Paul's writing, and he's writing about temptation, or sometimes translated as testing.
And I think that translation is where some of the confusions come in.
I think that's
because
right.
testing can mean a lot of things.
So let's be very blunt. What we talked about is that when you find yourself with making a moral or a godly choice, or giving in and making the wrong choice, the promise of God is that he will be there in those moments to help. And he is not going to let the situation be where you have to give in. Now, this is going to become very important when persecution happens, because it's very easy to talk about persecution and real severe persecution and being glib about it. I suppose when we are immature, we make all sorts of... we can sometimes live in a sort of fantasy world, if you're with me. You know what I mean? When we're kids, we dream of being the superhero. Yeah? When we... young in Christ. Yeah, okay, still now. When we're young in Christ, we can sort of dream about the Christian version of the superhero. Do you know what I mean? Sort of this persecution. I would stand. They come into the church with machine guns.
Well, I mean, Peter was like that, you know. I'll not desert you, Lord.
Yeah.
I'll be with you till death.
That's right, yeah. But like we imagine people come in with submachine guns and say, you know, disown Christ or die, and we bravely say we will die. And certainly when you look at Revelation 21 verse 8, which is something that just struck me when I've been doing Revelation, it talks about cowards, going into the lake of fire, basically. And the idea is there intrinsically within it that, you know, if the choice ever comes for us to have to make those incredible choices, we have to be prepared to own Christ regardless of consequence. And that's a big, big deal. We shouldn't be glib about it, and we shouldn't, be childish about it. But we should understand this, that even in those situations, the courage to do the right thing is a gift of God that will be given to those who are honorable in Christ. Now, having said that, and that's right, unfortunately, people have perverted the verse, if you like, into meaning something else. And so there's something else has come down to sort of like, how shall I put it?
I guess the idea that, because it talks about testing and tempting, so the temptation to sin, the temptation to deny Christ, those two things, God won't give you something that you can't cope with.
Yes.
But because the word's also translated as testing, sometimes we take this to mean you're not going to face anything in your Christian walk that's too hard.
Hard times.
Yeah, difficulties.
Yes.
You're not going to come against anything that you're not going to be able to stand up against. And that's what it's almost turned into.
Yes. And let's be fair, hard times come, and God will give us the courage to face hard times, but Christians go through hard times. And we are, not being funny, but the world has seen the most terrible things happen. The Black Death. Half of the country died within a few months. Half the country. It's no good misquoting that verse in the middle of that and saying, I won't be one of those that die because God won't let me be tested more than... Because that's just not right. If you're in the middle of a famine in Biafra, where the famine, the rate, you're not excluded just because you're a Christian. Christians starve to death. Christians die in car crashes. Christians die in, all sorts of things. And we have to understand the importance of that verse is about when we are tested and tempted to give in, God will give us the strength. But it doesn't mean to say that we'll not go through the tough, terrible, horrible things that everybody goes through.
I mean, you can take a very relevant example at the moment, and just on the news the other day, they showed a church in Hawaii. What's the name of the
Maui?
Maui. And this church was meeting in a coffee shop outside, because they've lost their church, and everyone in that church has lost their home.
Yes.
I think we do this verse a disservice when we use it in the wrong way. Because actually, to tell someone who's going through something they can't cope with, and we go through things that we just can't cope, that break us. To say to someone, don't worry, God will not give you more than you can handle, can crush them. Can't it? And I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever been there, but to say, don't worry, God won't give you anything you can't handle, when you're not handling something, can be very destructive and is a misuse of the passage.
And I think there's another darker side to it still, which is it almost becomes a Job-like criticism that if you're going through hard times, you're out of favour with God. And I've been doing some checking out on the parallels between Black Death and, the mild epidemics we had, like COVID. And COVID was terrible and people lost their lives, but it was nothing like the rate at which people died during the Black Death. But what was interesting, we saw to some degree, especially on YouTube, all sorts of conspiracy theories and all sorts of blame game being played out. And when you looked at what happened in the Black Death, the terrible religious hypocrisy that cropped up that blamed people for dying and tried to find scapegoats, and terrible anti-Semitic persecutions and all sorts of things happened. And if we have the wrong mindset to how we face disaster in life and what's going on when we live in this world, then it gives rise to some very, very difficult things that we have to, handle.